Welcome to Five or Flop, a podcast for the best and worst historical fiction has to offer. I'm your host, Erin.
And I'm Grace, and each week we'll be reading a different historical fiction book to see if they're a five or a flop.
Our theme for Season 3 is Back to School, and this week we're reading a personal favorite of mine, Between Shades of Grey by Ruta Sepetys.
And this is a book that is interesting because I had actually never heard of the topic of it ever before.
No, I did not when I read it, and she has two very well-known, well, she has a lot of very well-known books, but two that I read that are very well-known, and I definitely thought we were reading the other one, like I got the plots mixed up, but we'll get into that. But first, Grace, I heard we have a little birthday to wish.
Yes, if you are listening to this episode on its release day, which you may or may not, but if you are, it is my birthday.
Yay! And we are filming this well over a month before her birthday.
Yes. So Grace, in the future, I hope you are enjoying being 27. It is Tuesday.
Being
so
an
it's,
old.
Not a great day to have your birthday. But
do you know what we're doing for your birthday yet? Any ideas?
I'm working on it.
Okay.
I'm workshopping some things in my head.
This week I got back from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, which was a city I'd never visited before. It was actually pretty cute.
A beautiful, glittering metropolis. Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
I don't know if I would call it a metropolis. I don't think it was big enough to be a metropolis. It was definitely like a downtown area. Where I'm from in Florida, I would consider that like a city because like cities aren't very, well, I'm not from Miami, so cities aren't very big. But it's really shocks me, and we should be talking about this for next week's episode when we talk about the beautiful city of Philadelphia. But it really shocks me that Harrisburg is the capital of Pennsylvania.
No, I was just going to say it is like the ugly stepsister next to Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. And I feel like no offense to the people of Philadelphia, I feel like people don't even really have that many nice things to say about that.
I quite like Philadelphia personally, and I'm not here to bash on Harrisburg because I did have a very lovely time. My cousin is living up there. She was in a production of The Pirates of Penzance, which was a lot of fun, and we had a great weekend. However, I don't understand why it's the capital of the state for sure.
Well, also, you let me know that unfortunately your dirty chai was $7.
Which was insane. If I travel to somewhere outside of DC that is not New York or Boston, why am I spending $7 on a dirty chai?
You should at least get down to like Starbucks prices.
Yeah, no, that was insane. I was very unhappy, but there was this cute little flea market that we were at where I did start my holiday shopping for all of our friends. So to all of our friends listening to this, if I haven't already mentioned it to you, there's a strict $15 budget in place for all of you. So
very optimistic about which of our friends are going to listen to the pod because we know who will but not on time and who won't.
Not naming names or anything. Ashley and Kat, though, I did already get your gifts by time of recording, so.
For my birthday, not Christmas, to celebrate my birthday.
All right, are you reading anything good?
I just finished, I had a very interesting experience with my Storygraph recording for this book. So I just finished reading a book called YN by Esther Yee.
With your Storygraph recording for that book or for Between Shades of Grey?
For this book.
Okay.
Yes. So I really loved it. It's a very weird book, so I understand that it's not for everyone, but it's basically about the way that I'm going to describe it will make it not sound weird because all the weirdness is in like the language.
Okay.
But essentially a woman who becomes really obsessed with a K-pop idol. You'll understand this. The title is YN and it's referring to Your Name fanfiction.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. But I really liked it, so I rated it 4.75 stars on Storygraph. And it had all these accolades. It was like an NPR Best Book of the Year.
Oh, wow.
Like stuff like that. But it had a 3.09 average.
Oh, my God.
Which is really low.
Drastically bad.
Yeah. So I was like, am I wrong or am I smarter than all of these other people? I don't know.
What did you read? I always try to read, whenever I don't like a book, I go on the Storygraph reviews to try and find people who like corroborate my opinions.
No, I only do that if it's a book that has a really good average and I didn't like it, and then I'll go in and try and dig for bad reviews.
Okay, yeah, so you do it the way I do. I also don't do the opposite. Yeah. Because I'm like, oh, these people are all wrong.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to call it out because it's a memoir, so that seems kind of mean, but I just finished a book that I thought was very bad, and it had, like, only really good reviews. And all of the bad reviews were like, this book is really well written. It was just too hard for me to read because this person has gone through a lot of things. But I was like, I had the opposite problem because I thought the writing was really bad.
Oh, no.
Anyway, but
what
about you?
My opinion is slightly controversial of what I'm reading to my own opinions.
Oh.
I'm reading Between Sisters by personal fave and pod fave, Chris and Hannah.
Okay.
I've read several of her books outside of The Four Winds. This is her first non-historical fiction. Like, it's just regular fiction. She should stick to historical fiction.
See, she is so interesting because she is one of those authors that has this really big back catalog.
She has so many books.
She hasn't done the historical thing. Another author who actually we have not discussed on the pod before who's exactly like that is Taylor Jenkins Reid.
Yes.
And I feel the same way about her. I've read, to be fair, only one of her, like, normal contemporaries.
Was that the one you read on the bus back from Bad Cinderella?
Yes. And, like, reading on the bus from Bad Cinderella is like reading on Benadryl on the plane to Japan. It's just bad vibes. But I did not like it at all. So I do think when you make the switch to historical and you have contemporaries beforehand, I would tend to want to read the historicals.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think the book is necessarily bad. It's like 450 pages, though, and it is dragging. Like, it does not need to be this long. So, which I do not feel about any of her other books, which are also pretty long.
Yeah, well, we talked specifically in the episode about The Four Winds, how well it was paced. Like, how we felt like we were flying through.
This is not the case. Maybe if I maybe if I listened to the audiobook and there were some phenomenal Italian accents. But, you know, beggars can't be choosers.
Oh, so. Well. Well, should we get into our book for this week?
I think we should. Let me get that synopsis up for you. Lena is just like any other 15-year-old Lithuanian girl in 1941. She paints, she draws, she gets crushes on boys. So true. Until one night when Soviet officers barge into her home, tearing her family from the comfortable life they've known. Separated from her father, forced onto a crowded and dirty train car, Lena, her mother, and her younger brother slowly make their way north, crossing the Arctic Circle, to a work camp in the coldest regions of Siberia. Here they are forced, under Stalin's orders, to dig for beets and fight for their lives under the cruelest of conditions. Lena finds solace in her art, meticulously and at great risk documenting events by drawing, hoping these messages make their way to her father's prison camp to let him know they are still alive. It is a long and harrowing journey, spanning years and covering 6,500 miles, but it is through incredible strength, love, and hope that Lena ultimately survives. Between Shades of Grey is a novel that will steal your breath and capture your heart.
Whoa.
Yeah. So let's get into the author, Miss Ruta Sepetys, and I'm going to do my best to continue pronouncing that correctly, so I'm going to try and, like, if you hear me pause a little bit before saying it. She points out on her website that, quote, she is extremely proud to be of Baltic heritage, even if that means she has a name no one can pronounce, so therefore we're going to really go that extra mile.
And, you know, we're not going to have problems with Ruta.
No. So we might just say Ruta, but Sepetys.
Yes, Sepetys. A beautiful name.
So Ruta Sepetys is the daughter of a Lithuanian refugee born in Michigan, and she now lives in Tennessee. She's a #1 New York Times bestselling author of historical fiction, published in over 60 countries in multiple languages to go along with that. She is considered a crossover novelist, which I think is interesting for this particular season, because she's known for her appeal to both young adult and adult readers, and I think you can really see that in this book.
I agree. And we've talked about that multiple times. We talked about that with last season with The Book Thief, with Codename Verity. Mm-hmm. And even if we didn't agree with it necessarily, don't forget that that's how Johnny Tremaine was marketed.
Yes. She has won the Carnegie Medal and has presented at NATO, European Parliament, the Capitol, Library of Congress, and various embassies around the world. She's won the Bellagio Fellowship for her studies on human resilience. I'm not really sure what the Bellagio Fellowship is. I didn't really look it up. I think it's more of like an academic award rather than for her writing. Mm-hmm. But maybe most importantly, she was, quote, bestowed the Cross of the Knight of the Order by the President of Lithuania for her contributions to education and memory preservation, and was recently honored with a postage stamp containing her image.
Oh my gosh, she has a Lithuanian stamp?
Which is really cool, and also that just goes to show, like, how influential and important her books are for this very specific era of history that's not talked about. But anyways, I think that really sets the stage for like the level of research and love and personal connection that's going to go into this book.
Yeah, 100%.
Ruta has quite a selection of books. I know I've read Salt to the Sea, which I believe also deals with a similar time period. I have not read any of her other books, though. I did definitely mix up the titles of the two because I vaguely remember that. I vaguely remember that plot more than this one. So I think I was like, oh, this is the one with the boat. This is not the one with the boat.
Mm-hmm. I had never read any of her books before. I had a copy of Between Shades of Grey already, though. I picked it up out of a little free library because I was with a friend of mine, and they said, oh, that book is amazing. It was.
I did see Kate rated on Storygraph.
Shout out, Kate. But yeah, so I've had a copy of it for 3 years on my bookshelf, and now I have finally read it.
And there is a movie of this book.
Yes, but it came out under a different title. I believe the movie is called Ashes in the Snow.
You are correct.
Because it came out, I think, after the first 50 Shades of Grey movie, but before the last 50 Shades of Grey movie.
So you simply cannot put out a movie for teens called Between Shades of Grey.
Yeah, and they were just like, that's taken. You have to, I think we should talk about the title a little bit later and how it is interestingly, like, whether or not we think it's a good idea to have a different title, where we think the title comes from, all of that.
I'm looking at the cast list. There's really not anyone I'm familiar with.
I don't think it made the impact that the Book Thief movie did.
No, definitely not. I don't know if we'll watch that for a bonus episode. I do want to watch it, just otherwise. But we have quite a long lineup for bonus episodes. So just a quick disclaimer, as always, our judgments come based on the book and the characters within them rather than any real historical figures they may have been based on. And spoilers ahead.
Oh, yeah. Big spoilers. But really, it's hard to talk about this book without even – the broader plot is almost even more important than the individual things that happen, I feel
agree.
Like.
It's like I almost want to jump ahead and do the history section first, but I'm not going to. I'm going to resist.
Okay.
But I think there's going to be like a lot of interweaving of the two.
Mm-hmm. Well, what I said in the intro was this is about the deportation of Lithuanians to Siberian work camps during World War II by the Soviet Union. I had no idea that happened.
I only knew about it because I had read this book before.
First off, well, this is exactly why she has earned all of these accolades that she did, that Ruta Sepetys did, because I had never heard of this before. And she painted a really strong portrait.
Yes.
With her characters, with her words, even just... This did one of your favorite things. My copy had a map in the beginning.
My copy had a map in the beginning. I noted it immediately.
Of where they ended up. And it's just the distance, the time. You have to do very little to freak me out if you mention Siberia.
Yeah.
That is a scary, scary place.
Yeah.
And the things that the poor Lithuanian people went through were horrible. Absolutely horrible.
Yes.
More people should definitely know about it.
Yes, and we'll get to all of that in the history section. We'll also get to why many people don't know about it. Where do you want to start? Because I think should we just kind of start like going through the plot a little bit and stop when we...
Yeah, I think that's good. The beginning was really strong for me.
Yeah, so it pretty much kicks off right off the bat with like the Soviets coming into her house.
Yeah, you don't get much from her previous life. You start, it's like 3 a.m.
Yep.
The soldiers are coming into her house saying you have 10 minutes to pack and then you have to get on the train.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the language in that part was so good because Ruta Sepetys is writing the character in past tense.
Mm-hmm.
You can tell that in the time of the story that you're hearing, the protagonist, that Lena is still a child. She's 13 or 14.
Mm-hmm.
But her voice, her narration is older, and it betrays all of the terrible things that have happened to her.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't know what's coming yet, but you know that something is, and it is irreversibly bad.
Yes. And there's just such small things that give clues of that ahead. Like, she has a line of, like, before she left the house, she looked in the mirror and she's like, I didn't know this would be the last time I would look in a real mirror for 12 years.
Yes,
and
that was the one that got me, too.
Lines like those are not uncommon in books when something bad is going to happen, but they're always just so powerfully written if they're done well and if they're placed well. Mm-hmm. And this one was just placed really well.
Mm-hmm. And it's simple and true. And again, it's the whole chapter of that whatever is happening is not good. And then you get the detail of the 12 years.
You learn how long it's not good for.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that really stuck out to me from the opening is that her mother is, like, smashing their fine china and their crystal because her father is, like, a provost at a university. So they're a wealthy, educated family. So she's smashing all of this. And her brother Jonas is like, what are you doing? That's all of our nice stuff. That's so beautiful. Why are you doing this? And she's like, it's so beautiful. That's why I don't want the Soviets to have it.
Mm-hmm. And they come back in and they're like, you've destroyed Soviet property.
Yeah.
Like, they aren't even out of the house yet, and they've already seized. The thing for me that I think is so good about this book, or not the thing, one of the things that is important for especially an audience of Americans to read, this does to me a lot of the work that Chains does in placing you on what we think is the right side of history and showing us the bad. Like, obviously, current day and since World War II, as Americans, we've had a really contentious relationship with the Soviet Union and with Russia. But objectively, well, we were allies to them in World War II, but objectively, they won World War II.
Yeah.
And winning World War II when your opponents are the Nazis is a good thing to do.
Yeah.
But in this case, the Soviets are the ones perpetrating all of these terrible things against Lithuania, which is this country that's small that can't fight back. And then there are all of these sections about the prisoners, the deported Lithuanians, hearing about Germany going into Lithuania. And some of them are happy about it because they think, like, we're going to get our country back.
Yeah.
And then there's one man in the prison camp who's Jewish, and he's like, it doesn't make a difference.
No, it wouldn't. And it wouldn't have.
Yeah.
And it's really haunting to see that, you know, those conversations are, in hindsight, it's so easy to be like what you were saying, like, oh, the Nazis were the bad guys, everyone else stopped them. But, like, there were other massive genocides happening too, and it was all evil.
Yeah, it's not good from almost any perspective.
And I'm going to jump ahead quite a bit because they start out at one prison camp, they're eventually moved to Siberia. And there's one point where the Americans are coming and giving supplies to the Russians. And they're like, oh my God, the Americans are coming to save us. And the Americans, like, whether they don't know that the people are there, the Russians were, like, hiding the Lithuanians. But it was also, like, how much did they really know and were assisting it, you know? But so it extends that complicated picture even more of, like, it goes back to, you know, kind of in the broader World War II subject area, you see the conversation of, like, how much did the rest of the world know? And again, it's like one of those moments of, like, raising that important question in line with reflecting on good versus bad.
Yeah. And it's the passage of time in this book is so interesting because you, for the most part, don't know how much time is passing. There are very few landmarks for you to be able to identify with. But at one point, the story starts in 1941, and at one point, they hear about Pearl Harbor.
Yes.
And they think that is going to result in something. But then for them, of course, it doesn't.
No. So let's talk a bit about, or let's keep going with the plot for a bit. So they're on this train, and they're separated, like, all the strong men. They try to take her younger brother away, and her mother trades her pocket watch. And Lena makes this comment of, like, that's the day we learned, like, how much a human life is worth. Like, today it was a pocket watch. And so her brother gets to go with them.
So it's this, her brother, and her mom, and their father has been separated to go to the heavier labor work camp with all of the grown men.
Yes. Sorry, I should have clarified that, but yes. So then they're on this train car, and they're going to, they don't know where.
Somewhere
Bad.
Far East Russia, Mongolia-ish.
Yes. And if I had the map in front of me, I could probably give you better details, but I do not have the map in front of me, so that's okay.
And I forgot my book.
But
I always have it, and I forgot
I
now
know,
when
right?
it matters.
There is one part where she does find her father on another train, and he was basically, like, kind of in code, but was like, use your art to send messages. So the map is supposed to be something she drew. And actually, that's at one point the Soviets find out that she can draw, and they pull her in to draw different maps.
Yes.
So I don't believe it was actually, that one was not supposed to be the one she drew for the Soviets, but that's how you're supposed to connect the dots of, like, this is one she drew.
And they even at one point, it's such a chilling scene, they bring her in to do a portrait of, like, the general that's there. And it's her sitting across from him staring and not knowing if he is going to pay her in food as promised, if he is going to assault her, if, like, she has no idea what's happening. Because she knows that her life is completely in their hands.
Yes.
Whether or not she actually does anything wrong.
And there's a lot of different experiences that are explored at the camp. Like, horrible experiences, but a couple of different ways they're explored. There's one part where the women basically have to dig their own grave. And then the guards make them get in it and shoot, like, around them as a joke. And then they're like, ha, 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 we're all done with that. Go pull beets.
Yeah. Get out and go work.
And then they try, because her mother speaks Russian, they try to get her to be a spy, which she refuses. And then there's this other family that's there as well. And I don't remember the mother's name, but the son is Andreas.
Yes.
He was able to get into the camp with the women because his mother was like, oh, he's slow, he's dumb, like he
can't work.
Yeah, he can't work. They basically threaten to kill him unless the mother becomes a prostitute for them.
And so she does.
So she does. And so they're treated better in the camp. And at first Lena's like, well, you're collaborating, blah, blah, blah. And then finds out there's a lot more going on. And then you see also they're all being treated as prisoners and forced to wake up in the middle of the night to sign a guilty plea statement saying that they would have to work for 25 years of hard labor.
And they don't, some of them agree to do it. They get worn down, and some of them manage to hold out because they say it won't make any difference.
Yes.
Whether or not we sign, we will have to stay here. So we're going to keep our dignity and not sign.
And then I believe it's the people who don't sign that are exported again.
They get sent, that's when they get sent to Siberia.
Yes. And that is when things go from bad to worse.
In their first labor camp, they basically are forced to share already built residences with the local people. Like, they're forced to sleep in the corner of this woman's cabin who doesn't speak their language and doesn't like them.
Yeah.
But then when they get to Siberia, there's nothing.
No.
They have to build lean-tos to sleep in. There's no heat, there's no stoves, no
And this is like
food,
right before
no
the
nothing.
polar night is coming, which is when the sun does not come out for like
4 or 5 months.
Yeah. Oh God, I don't even know where to go next because there's like so much to talk about with this book.
No, the constant throughout the book is that struggle for food and trying to get messages to Lena's father.
Yes, which is done through her continuing to draw and transmit art that way, which I will be bringing up again in the historical section.
And it's not even that she knows she's able to send things to him, because she can't. If just one person is going out, she will just like hand them the paper and they will give it to the next person who they see. And then maybe in a year it will get to him. It's not reliable. But also they show if you don't, first of all, they're not being fed a sustainable amount of food anyway. But also if you don't work, you don't get fed either.
And they get like a ration of bread. So like scurvy is also rampant.
Well, I was going to say at one point her brother gets scurvy and is on death's door basically, but they aren't feeding him because he's not working.
Yeah.
So it requires a lot of knowing how to steal food, how to take things, how to, like when they go to Siberia, there's an abundance of fish, all of this fishing. They're not allowed to fish.
No.
They're not allowed to have any of the things that the Soviet officers have.
And at one point, her and another girl like find a dead owl. And they're like, let's smuggle this back. And all of the other prisoners like stand around Lena to block her so she can hide this dead owl in her coat. Like not even knowing if they'll get to share in it, but at least someone gets something.
And and that's the first time they have meat in years.
Yeah. This is another one that shows the strength of community.
Absolutely.
That's just
can't.
a big theme, I think, in children and young adult literature.
One of the things that struck me the most was there were a lot of, in the camp that they were in first, it was all of the leaders other than one elderly man were women because all of the men got separated out. And one of the women who was able to write because she had been a teacher said, when you all get deported out to the Siberian camp, she knows that her name isn't on the list for whatever reason. She says, I will sign the commitment to the 25 years that they want us to so I can stay here and send letters to people and get replies. That was one of the things that struck me. And then Andreas, the side character, when her brother gets scurvy, he steals a can of tomatoes for him, and that's what keeps him from dying of scurvy. When they're in Siberia, the only doctor they have is a man who was a veterinarian, and obviously he hasn't been one for 5 years. The reliance on each other, like they know they won't survive without each other. And their mother does not survive through the book.
No.
She makes it very close to the end, but she dies at the end of the book.
And even when you hit the end of the book, you know it's still years before.
That's the thing that makes it so devastating. It's, again, hard to tell how much time is passing, but I think they have like 9 or 10 years left.
Yeah, I don't think it's like if we know the whole thing if we know Lena's whole experience is 12 years, this book does not encompass even half of that.
There's so much more to go. And that's the quiet devastation of it, I think, is the ending is just her resolving to get through it.
Yeah.
I think because there's this one character who is a man he wants to die.
Yeah.
He keeps asking them to like find ways to kill him, essentially. Lena grapples with this, like, why do I want to live so badly? And she finally realizes, like, that's giving up. Like, they win if I die.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to, and I don't want to.
Yeah.
But even still, she has so much more to endure. And you know that she lives because of what you get in the epilogue, which we can talk about next.
And
that's the thing that's the worst, is knowing they're not done.
I see you have this note here as well. It is left very ambiguous if the father lives or dies. They are told at one point he was killed in a prison camp. But then there are other anecdotes of, well, someone heard this person was killed and then they showed up. So, like, the record, like, that record-keeping system and that system of passing knowledge is not accurate.
And then also they suggest to her, like, oh, well, who told you your father was dead? And she said the Soviets did. And they were like, well, why would you believe them?
Yeah.
They would just want to torture you. Like,
exactly.
So you don't see her reunite with her father. You don't know if he's actually dead or not. And I think it's smart to leave it ambiguous. Lena and her brother have to live 8, 9, 10 more years without even knowing.
Yeah. Oh, I'm like getting chills.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Oh my gosh. This book is crazy.
Should we talk about the slight romance? Because it really gave me a coal miner's bride vibes.
There was a slight romance, and I was torn about how to feel about it. Mm-hmm. But I think the further I got in and when I got to the end, I was like, I'm going to let her have it. Like
in books like these, I feel like when you can, it's always like the, not enemies to lovers, but like the annoying boy to lovers.
Yeah.
And I always think it's cute because, like, she needs something.
Yeah. Well, also
it's Andreas, by the way. It's the boy we've been mentioning.
Yes. And when they were in the first labor camp, he gave her a kiss for her birthday. Mm-hmm. And that was early on in the book when I was kind of like, okay, fine. And then later, she goes to Siberia. He doesn't. Things just get so much worse that I was like, you know what? I'm happy that you got a kiss.
It was like the same dynamic where, like, she didn't really like him and then they, like, grew close. Very a coal miner's bride. It was like that same structure of a romance.
Well, also when they were packing, she said, like, I brought a ton of things with me that I, in hindsight, like, didn't need but glad to have. Uh-huh. And so she has a copy of a Dickens book.
Yeah.
And when they were on the train, he tore a bunch of pages out of it to roll cigarettes, which is hilarious to me. So he steals her a new Dickens book from the Soviets and writes in all of the margins for her, and she reads it in Siberia. So cute.
And also that's how she learned how to read Russian from a Dickens book, which was so funny.
Oh my gosh. So she was doing her learning.
Yeah, she was doing her learning. Yeah, I don't know.
In the end, I was okay with the romance.
I'm happy with it. I thought it was cute. We do find out in the epilogue they get married, so they both survived. So
oh my gosh,
good for them.
And lived to get married and found each other again. So then here's the other element that I think we need to touch on, which is the character of Kretsky, who we haven't talked about yet.
Okay. This was not the element I thought you were going to say we needed to touch on.
Oh.
But I will bring that one up after.
Okay. Well, this is the one apparently that relates to the title.
Okay.
So Kretsky is one of their Russian guards, and he goes with them between camps.
Yes.
And once they get to the second camp, their mom keeps talking to him. Mm-hmm. And there are even
like first name basis talking to him.
Yeah, like calls him Nikolai, all of this. Lena suspects that she is sleeping with him.
Yes.
And when she suggests this, the mom snaps at her and is like, he is the reason that I am still alive. The other soldiers were going to kill me and he prevented them.
Yeah.
And, he has helped us. And so I am going to be the bigger person and be grateful.
Yeah.
And you get a little bit more interiority of him later when Lena talks to him after her mother has died. And he seems, honestly, kind of like Von Linden in Codename Verity, not to the greatest extent. But he clearly doesn't like what he's doing and doesn't want to be here, but doesn't know a way not to be.
Yeah.
So in the back, Ruta Sepetys did say, like, the Between Shades of Grey mostly came from him.
That is so interesting because I must have skipped over that part in the back because
It was like in the reader's guide. Like, I just kind of skipped it.
It's also, I mean, the title is because she's an artist, so she's looking at color and she's looking at all of that. And then there is one part when they're in Siberia where she's like, everything that you can see is just a shade of gray. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of twofold, but I didn't know that.
Well, there are a lot of different things, but yeah, again, like shades of gray. Morally gray, yeah. So, because obviously, like, there are Soviets represented in this book that are clearly worse than him. Mm-hmm. But
clearly
he's still
enjoy what they're doing.
Yeah.
And like relish in it.
But he's clearly still a bad person.
Yes.
Like, he still is abusive to them and all of this and clearly doesn't have a high opinion of them. Mm-hmm. So, I'm still not quite sure how I feel about the execution of that. It's not the hugest plot line in the whole book, which is why I was kind of surprised that she mentioned it as, like, relating to the title.
Yeah, I did find that. I think it was probably a combo of, like...
Well, it's
also
like
the color thing, but like
I
that's
think-
where I was going with it in my head.
Well, it's multiple reasons because
Yeah.
it's not a title. Like, she doesn't say the title in the text of the
No,
book.
it's not one of those.
It's not as literal as that. But yeah, that was I don't know, it was interesting.
What I thought you were going to touch on is you have an interesting note that there are lots of italic sections in this book.
Yes.
And you are a famous italics hater, as I'm a famous footnotes hater. But the italics in this book, I thought served a really great purpose of they were flashing back to her life before. They were dropping hints at things of like why they were in prison was because her father helped like their relatives escape to Germany. You were getting hints of what was happening, and then it helps you connect the dots in the present.
No, it worked so well. This was
well.
genius. I think it allowed her to start in the middle of the action.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't get all of this boring buildup in the beginning, but you have this information about their lives previously, which is important for you to know, especially since so much of it relates to Lena and her art.
Yes.
But it worked so well, partially because I think the way that she chose to lead it in. Like, for example, it'll be her in the present day in the prison camp putting on her, like, tattered dress, for example. And then she'll flash back to a memory of her previous life in Lithuania shopping with her mother and having, like, a nice, normal day in her comfortable, happy life. So the use of the imagery reflecting across both lifetimes made that connection really effective. I do hate italic sections. For whatever reason, I'm just like, if you're separating it from the rest of the text, for whatever reason.
Grace is like, I simply do not need to absorb that information.
I feel like people do it out of laziness a lot, especially if they're really, really long.
Yeah.
But in this case, it was done so well.
And they weren't long. They weren't more than like 2 pages.
They weren't more than a couple paragraphs often, sometimes.
Yeah, that was more usual. I think the longest one was maybe like 2 pages.
Yeah. And they were executed so well. Clearly, there was reason behind them. I think sometimes these are executed, italic sections are executed kind of lazily, but these were so well thought through and they were well written and provided good info and good support structure to the book that I was very happy they were there. So
I agree.
Ruta, great job.
Yeah. This book was just executed so well.
And this is a debut.
Which shocks me.
This is an insane debut.
It's like how when we talked about the Davenports, which was the author's debut, and we're like, we can tell she's going to have really strong books in the future.
Yes.
And it's like with Madeline Miller, we're like, okay, we can kind of tell like this is a debut. No.
We talked so much about her next book. We all read it, and it was so much. And
great.
We
this
saw improvement. Yeah.
And just to explore such a specific historical event that is not talked about and execute it so flawlessly in your first book is incredible.
You can tell there was a lot of heart in it. It wasn't like, oh, I was researching and stumbled across this, like how we heard Taya Cooper talk about her process in the Cartographer's Secret, which is also fine. No problem.
That is also a very valid way of storytelling.
You can tell this is really personal and emotional.
Do you want to transition into the historical section? Because I do have a lot here. Or do you have anything more you want to say on the book?
I have one thing that's not important, so I'll get out of the way real quick, and then we'll get into your clearly very important, well-researched stuff. But my copy had a bunch of quotes in the beginning, and there were quotes from famous pod authors Laurie Halse Anderson and also Susan Campbell Bartoletti, who wrote A Coal Miner's Bride. So,
I was going to say, I was like, who the fuck is that?
That's Miss Coal Miner's Bride.
Oh my God. Okay. And I just referenced her too. She saw the romance in this book. She gave it a hand heart.
Exactly. So I just was, delighted to note the presence of pod authors giving pull quotes for the book.
I do love that. We love when pod authors support pod authors years before this existed.
Exactly. Like this year when they asked Min Jin Lee to do that top 100 best books of the 21st century in the New York Times, and she put the Underground Railroad.
Exactly.
Okay.
Min Jin Lee, who knows we exist.
Yes, our fave. Okay, let's
so
do the
history section. I think this is one of the books, and I would say this is more the odd ones out of the podcast that you can read it and you just get a gut feeling that everything is accurate. I wouldn't say that of all of them, but Codename Verity, which was actually very recent, I would say that of Codename Verity. Like, there's a couple that just really stick out to me as, like, I feel like I don't even need to fact check this, but I mean, I'm going to because that's my job. But while the characters were fictional in this one, their stories and experiences were based on real interviews with survivors. And one example of this that really stuck out to me is there's a part in Siberia where a visiting doctor, and he's part of, like, the checks and regulations to make sure that, like, the prison camps are up to standard, blah, blah, blah. He came and he actually did give them pea soup. Like, that is a real story down to the soup.
Jeez.
So another thing I want to say, and I think I had this more reflected at the end, but I want to really reinforce up front that when they came back from deportation, the survivors were not allowed to talk about this.
Which is another trauma again.
It is, and not an uncommon one from people who survive these sorts of situations. The fact that survivor stories were so integrated into this is just so incredibly important because those people were not really allowed to talk about it until the Soviet Union fell, which was frankly not that long ago.
No.
So I think that's important to mention so that there is some details I found that it was limited to find information on. There are not a lot of sources. However, I did find a lot pointing to this book because of the, interviews with all the survivors. But So deportations by the USSR began with the finish in 1935, so a couple years before this book even took place.
Okay, wow.
And it expanded to other countries from there. In the aftermath of the conquest of the Baltic states in 1941, which is when this took place, almost 40,000 people were deported to the Soviet Far East in an effort coordinated by Ivan Serov under the command of Flopberia. Again, pronunciation is not going to be my strong suit here. But also these were not good people, so,
And I mean, so this is for the purposes of having them work in Siberia and then being able to seize the property in Lithuania.
Property. And it got to the point that, like, people from the USSR, like, assumed their identities and were, like, living in their houses and, like, being them.
Oh
like,
my gosh.
Assume their names, even.
Wow.
So between 1940 and 1953, over 100,000 Lithuanians were deported to gulag camps and forced settlements in Siberia. Over 70% were women and children, and many remained in exile and died in exile, and others were slowly released following Stalin's death. The last deportees were only released in 1963.
So over 20 years.
Over 20 years. And they were deported for reasons as small as owning a farm that was seized and anyone deemed, quote, an enemy of the people. So in this book, you could see a lot of, like, academics, teachers, librarians, anyone who had, like, international contacts and relationships. And in Lena's family, her parents helped their relatives escape to Germany. Only 1/3 of deportees were ever returned, and 30,000 people were prohibited from settling back into their homelands.
Oh my gosh. So of all of the people sent away, 30% were not allowed to go home.
No.
Oh my gosh.
And I am realizing now that we didn't talk about the epilogue of the book, which we said we were going to do.
Oh.
But I have a point that I'm going to circle back to with it.
Great.
So as depicted in the book, while the Lithuanians were disillusioned with the Nazis' regime and did organize resistance over time, the Soviets were still seen as public enemy number one. Like, they were the big evil.
Yeah.
And Soviets remained in Lithuania, occupying it until 1991 when it collapsed. That's 5 decades, which is horrifying. Let's jump back for a minute to the epilogue, which is basically researchers and other people are at the Siberia camp, like, unearthing documents in history. And they find, like, this letter written by Lena.
Buried,
about the experiences. In 2006, the Lithuanian Youth Council started Mission Siberia to raise awareness and send young people to Siberia to research and clean Lithuanian cemeteries better understand what happened. So I don't know if the ending was, supposed to be that. I don't believe the ending was set past 2006. I don't remember.
No, I think there were 2 people being presented as like, hey, we found this.
Yes.
But it was not. It was kind of portrayed as like a random
discovery. So I don't, but that does reflect that there are, like, organized efforts to, learn about the experiences, pay respects, like, keep it clean, all of that. There were a couple things I couldn't quite verify, but I am led to believe because so much of this was rooted in survivor stories. So the U.S. did send supplies to the Soviets. I didn't see anything specifically about Siberia, but I would not be surprised if that situation where they had to hide from the U.S., I would not be surprised if that really happened. I also didn't find anything about being forced to sign guilty pleas. But again, because so much of what happened is so incredibly taboo for people to talk about.
We don't have info.
No, we don't have info. And I definitely do believe that was part of a testimony from a survivor.
Okay.
Really harrowing stuff.
Wow.
And the book does not, for a young audience, the book does not shy away from that.
No, it doesn't pull punches. But hearing all of it like that does make it worse.
It does. Actually, quick question about the epilogue. Something that I'm now realizing confusion about. So they found it buried, but she does mention that she's like, my husband, Andreas. Like, did she go back and like put that there?
Well, I thought maybe you're right that it's in Siberia. I had thought that they buried it in like their yard in Lithuania. And again, I forgot my book, so we can't check.
Okay, so I'm not going to dock any points from the star rating on that because I think one of us, or probably both of us, are like misremembering something.
Yeah.
And maybe you're right that they did find it in Lithuania, but they did find a bunch of artifacts from there as well. And they found her drawings from there.
I mean, both of those things can obviously be true.
Yes, and...
Or maybe there is more movement and they met up again, or, who knows.
And to close us off before we go into the star rating, I do want to end on the point of artwork, which was what was unearthed with Lena's note.
Yes.
And...
So that was real too?
That was real. Like the transferring artwork, a lot of people were able to share their traumas and experiences and like get notice to their family members and their friends that they were alive through artwork and through like secret coded messages.
Yeah, so it's an easier way to not be censored.
Exactly. Art was a very, very real medium and very, very real form of expression and storytelling, and not just fictional storytelling, like telling the story of what's happening to you.
I'm glad that that's real, and I also think just in terms of the book as like a work of literature, Lena's art was really well integrated into the story.
Yeah.
It gave her a sense of who she was as a person before this terrible thing happened to her.
Yes. All right. Well, should we head to our star calculator?
Yes.
All right. For this season, we've modified to the categories of historical accuracy, theme, character, story, and vibes. I'll go first. I gave it straight 5s in every category. Something that I had noted but we didn't really discuss. Characters specifically, I thought the secondary characters were very strong. There were a lot of them, and I felt like I could identify like the personality traits of the individual characters. So that really stuck out to me.
And there were even a few that weren't necessarily given names. There were a few that she just referred to as like the grouchy man, the old man. But you're right, they all were really distinct.
Yes, so that is a 5 for me. Another perfect 5, almost 2 weeks in a row. There was the Davenports in between.
For me, historical accuracy 5, theme 5, characters 4, story 4, still strong, but like, not quite 5, and vibes 5, so that's an average of 4.6. I think I gave it a 4.25 on Storygraph, but for me, this is a pod 5.
Yeah, this is a pod 5, and I'm actually pulling up the Storygraph now. It does have an average rating of 4.35, and anything over 4 is very high. This is one of the highest average ratings I've seen on Storygraph.
That would be a good bonus episode, is us ranking all these by Storygraph average rating.
That would be crazy. The Spy, imagine how high that would go. That'd be crazy. Anyways, I think this is a solid 5 for both of us.
Yes, absolutely.
Would you read more books by her?
Yeah, I would.
I actually think I'm going to reread Salt to the Sea because I remember really liking that one as well.
Great, you can report back.
I will. Wow, we are kind of killing it with 5s. And I feel like there's some, like when I rated The Irish Mill Girl a 5, like that was clearly biased from childhood nostalgia. This one, there's also a couple that very much deserve their 5s, and this is one of them.
Yeah, I mean, and we've said it a lot this season, but I think it bears repeating that if you know a teenager, you should give this book to them.
Yes.
Like I said, I think this book is for slightly older teens.
Yeah.
So anyone that's between, honestly, like 13 and up.
Yeah. This is a 13
including
plus.
Adults, like no ceiling.
Yeah. No, this is definitely a crossover. I think it was Codename Verity we said, like, there might not be a specific place in the curriculum, but there's a lot of opportunities for, like, book reports on different, like historical fiction books, both in English and in history class. And I would add this to the list of books that should be offered.
Yes. If this was in school, I would not be mad about it.
No, not at all. Next week, we are revisiting a pod author. This is the first time that we've ever revisited someone else we've read.
This is insane. And frankly, it's also insane because we did not do this on purpose.
No, it's because I snuck both of these books on the list. We are reading Fever, 1793 by Laurie Halse Anderson, author of Chains, who we read for, I believe, our second book this season.
Second or third, up there.
Yeah.
Anyway, we are super excited, but in the meantime, you should make sure to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at 5orflop_pod. And don't forget about our Storygraph reading challenge so you can follow along with all the books that we're reading this season.
And if you have any recommendations for us, we do have a link in our bio to a form where you can drop any titles you think we should read on future seasons and or bonus episodes. And if you have any other questions or, just want to chat, or if you want to come on the pod, always open to guests, feel free to email us, fiveoflop@gmail.com. And until then,
Happy reading.
And happy birthday to Grace.
Bye.